Hey, coaches. Happy Thursday. How are y'all doing? Hey, guys. How's everything going? I believe we're live. So let me know if you can hear me, if you can see me. Let me know how you're all doing. You doing good? How's everything going today? We are talking about imposter syndrome today because this is just something that everybody deals with, so it's never a topic that ever is going to go away, because it's not just something that a select few people have. Everybody has it. So it's a really important conversation to have because it can hold us back if we don't deal with it. Hey, Denise, how are you doing? All right. I'm seeing people on here. Leave me a comment if you can hear me, if you can see me, if we're all good before I dive into the training today. I want to get into it because I want to respect your time, but I want to make sure everyone can still hear me. We're all good. And this whole topic of imposter syndrome, I know I used to hear it a lot, even in the beginning of my coaching. I used to hear this phrase being thrown around, and I never really knew that I had it. I didn't know exactly what it was. So if you're in that boat and you don't know exactly what it is, or you think you know what it is, but you don't know maybe even areas of yourself that fall into this category, this is going to be really enlightening. It's going to be a really good conversation for us to have today. All right. So as coaches, let me know in the comments if you have ever felt like you're not expert enough. If you've ever even just had a moment, it could be something that you feel all the time, every day, or if you've just had a moment where you thought like, wow, can I actually do this? Like, am I actually an expert enough to be doing this? Let me know in the comments, or leave me a heart. Leave me a heart emoji in the comments if you've ever had this come up for you. Hey, Joanna. Sandy, hey. Good to see you guys on here. Chances are you have. Chances are this is something that has come up for you. And the reason why this is a chance is because everybody has it. And it doesn't matter how expert you are. If you're just starting out, there are high-level executives that deal with imposter syndrome. There are, multi-seven-figure business owners that still deal with imposter syndrome. So if we know that it doesn't have anything to actually do with your expertise, right? It doesn't have anything to do with how expert you are, because everybody has it. What is at the root of it? How can we understand it so that we can address it in our own lives? All right. So today we're going to be talking about that, how it shows up, what you can do about it. All right. Leave me some hearts if you're with me. So imposter syndrome is defined as this. It's defined as the psychological pattern in which one doubts one's accomplishments and has this internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. So it's this internalized fear that someone or a large group of people, it could be like publicly, it could be a private conversation, someone out there is going to call you out, right? They're going to be disappointed in you. They're going to think that, you weren't who you said you were. You said you were an expert and you could help and you didn't. Like what all of those fears, our biggest fear around letting someone down, encompasses that umbrella of imposter syndrome. All right. So, this is something that comes up all the time, right? Basically, you're spending your time wondering like if you're good enough or not, if you're educated enough, if you're capable enough, right? Am I even able to do this? Who am I to be doing this? Right? Can I take on this responsibility of people trusting in me? Right? Once we open up our doors and we decide to be open for business, now we have this huge responsibility that we've placed on ourselves that people are trusting in us, right? I have that thought, right? One of my big thoughts is people are counting on me, right? So it can be different sentences in your mind, like everyone's counting on me. Who am I with this responsibility, right? So a lot of times it comes from our own mind. Sometimes though, and there are instances where it happens in real life where we'll have people in our lives who are doubting us, right? People who are telling us we're not ready, or capable of doing what we're doing, or that it's not possible to be successful with that anymore. Like nobody succeeds with that. So sometimes there will be people in your life that are kind of like naysayers about it. But most of the time, it's created in our own minds, right? And the reason why this is such a big conversation in the coaching world is because by nature, as coaches, what we do is we help people. Like we are here to help, we are here to serve, we are here to help lift people up and help them transform their lives and become a bigger version of themselves. And we have a mission behind why we even decided to get into this in the first place. So if you think about it, we are like the number one candidate to deal with imposter syndrome around who are we to help people, right? That's one of the biggest things that gets in the way as a coach, is that not thinking that you can help them, right? So can you see how this could be a really big problem for your career? Leave me a thumbs up if you're like, yeah, this is a big problem for my career. If I'm a coach and I'm out there to serve and help people, and my biggest fear is that I'm going to be exposed as a fraud for trying to help people. Can you see how this is counterproductive for coaches in the coaching world? But again, everybody deals with this, even like high-level executives. And what I've noticed in the coaching world, which is so funny, is a lot of times we think that the reason we feel that way is we're just not as qualified as some of the other coaches we see out there. But I talk to a lot of coaches with a lot of big qualifications behind their name and a lot of time spent in education. Like we're talking like people who have doctorates, right? People that have gone back to school to become, PTs, dietitians, nurse practitioners. Do you guys know that a nurse practitioner is like one step below a doctor? And even they deal with this, right? So imposter syndrome happens no matter where you are on the spectrum of your learning, right? No matter how experienced you are or how long you've been, educated in the field of health, right? So what are some of the symptoms of imposter syndrome? And I'm going to go into them, but I want to hear from you guys. What does imposter syndrome look like for you? Like if you were to think of, and it doesn't have to be personal you, but like when you think of imposter syndrome, how would you describe the symptoms of imposter syndrome? What is that, how does that in your mind? Because we think in like pictures and images. So when you think of imposter syndrome, what does that look like for you? What's a symptom of that? And you guys are probably going to identify with a lot of these symptoms because we've all been there at some point, whether it's something we're currently struggling with or something we've had to move through before in the past. So how for a coach does imposter syndrome show up in the coach's body, like in their mind, in how they feel about what they're doing? Like how does it not being as good as someone else. Exactly, Holly. Yes. Comparing yourself to other coaches and thinking that they just know more than you because they have more testimonials than you, they've helped more people. So of course they're an expert now. Melissa, self-doubt. Yeah, exactly. Feeling like I shouldn't try. Exactly. Like it comes up in like, you know what? There's already too many people out there that are experts. It's too late for me. Like I could never get to that point, right? If I post something educational, someone will disagree with me and contradict me. Denise, thank you so much for that one. That is huge. Do you know how many coaches out there, even experts? This is one of the funny things about the more credentials you have, like the more time you spend learning, the more you realize how much you don't know. Right? And it's a good thing, right? Because it keeps us humble and it keeps us always learning and always open to improve. It's amazing. But one of the things that happens with people when they have so much knowledge and they spent so much time learning and studying is they realize there's so many different perspectives out there and everybody has something valid to contribute. So if I post something and I'm, trying to be educational and I'm like, hey, this is what you all need to hear as truth because it's going to really help you. Someone out there is going to be like, yeah, but I don't agree with the way you said that. Or I agree with everything you said, but this one thing here is actually not really accurate. You got it a little bit wrong. Right? How many of you have thought about that when you're saying something, you second guess yourself that maybe someone's going to point out something in the way you said it and say, yeah, but that wasn't exactly right. Actually, there's this study over here. Did you see this study over here that had different findings? That's so like old news, right? And so what that looks like is, your brain is going into this like future that hasn't happened and worrying about the worst case scenario of what could happen. And what happens is it tells you, maybe you shouldn't post this right now. Maybe you shouldn't be doing anything right now because it's trying to protect you from what your brain sees as like death, right? And in our case, as coaches, when we're posting and we're showing up in the world to serve, it's social death. If someone comes and disagrees with us and, points out, that you're a fraud for even trying to be an expert because you were wrong about something, right? Yeah. This happens all the time, and it's interesting once we start noticing it, the sneaky ways that it shows up, all right? One of the biggest symptoms that I haven't heard anybody offer yet is biggest symptoms of imposter syndrome is just like not like feeling guilty about what you charge, like feeling guilty about how much you ask for to work with you, right? Who am I to be charging this much? Who am I to be really like asking people to pay me, right? Who am I to say that I can do X, Y, Z, but I've really only ever done it for myself? I don't really have testimonials yet of doing it for other people. So who am I to actually say that I can help someone? Or maybe I've only helped a couple people so far. And there's all these other people out there who look at their testimonial page. They've got like pages and pages of transformation pictures or just testimonials. Who am I to, show up with like my little like self and no testimonial page, right? People want to see that. People are going to want to see my credentials. People are going to want to see my testimonials, right? Your brain thinks people are going to want to see the testimonials, right? It's going into the future and deciding that people are going to think you're an imposter if you don't have that, right? So another symptom is shame, like shame about, putting that message out there into the world, worrying about that. We talked about this, right? Worrying about that person that's going to disagree with you and be like, nope, you're wrong, Denise, that wasn't right. You used the wrong lingo. It's not even actually called that anymore. Didn't you know? I thought you were an expert, right? Another one is fear of rejection and fear of disappointing people, right? This is big for all of you people pleasers out there. Raise your hand if you are a people pleaser and you want to make people happy and you want to make people like you, right? What if people are talking bad about you? What if they see you out there trying to do this coaching thing and they're just kind of like talking amongst each other about you, about who do you think you are? Did you see she's trying to be another one of those coaches that I see everywhere? What if they don't accept you? Right? Another big one, and this is a big one that a lot of coaches will notice in the beginning when you first start getting those few clients. Melissa's like, yes, me. Yeah, it's all of us. Another big one, when you take, and this is when you have your first few clients, you'll notice this come up, where you're really excited that you've got someone to say yes, they're signing up to work with you, Another symptom of imposter syndrome is this fear of responsibility, right? Right? We're so responsible for their results, right? They've got to get results. This is their experience with coaching, and they have to see that this is it for them. This is going to change their life. I have to get them to see that. I've got to get them results, right? That's how it shows up in our business with our clients. And it comes from this idea that we've decided that we are the ones who create the results. And so we have to show up enough for them so they'll see the value in us because they invested in us. And if they don't get results, we're an imposter and we're not good coaches. And so we make it mean all of these things. And the worst thing that can happen is when you believe that's true and one of your clients needs coaching on their mindset and they lash out at you and say, this is just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. This is harder than I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to get, I think I need a dietitian. I think I need to go see someone who's more of an expert. If you already have that imposter syndrome and you're already like, I have to get them results, and what if I'm not expert enough? And now someone's called you out on it, forget it, right? Now it's like, let me just go and hide under a rock for 3 months before I ever try taking on a client again, right? This is how it can show up in our business. So part of this is understanding where your clients' results come from, right? And how you know that you have this belief that like you're very responsible for their results is when you're like constantly hovering over them like a helicopter, right? You're like hovering over them, like I gotta check in with them so they know that I'm still here and I care and I want to make sure they're getting results today, right? Because you feel very responsible for like doing it for them. So if you've had a client before and you've ever felt this way, like, are they gonna, like, do they think I'm checking in enough? Am I supporting them enough? Am I giving them enough? Let me know. These are all symptoms of imposter syndrome. And when I'm telling you everybody has it, everybody has it. And it just changes how it shows up. It changes its form along the way, right? So having drama about your prices, or you're just not offering your services for anything, or you're just offering free services or low prices, because then people won't be disappointed in you with whatever their result. It's like, I didn't get their expectations up, right? Or you just never make offers to people, right? You don't show up, or you're like, you never even tell people like, hey, I can help with this. This is what I help with. This is what I can do. I've done it myself. I know I can help. If you're struggling with this, I know I can help. Remember the other day when we talked about the identity scale? Who remembers talking about the identity scale on day 1? Why do you think that's so important? Why do you think we're talking about the identity scale? Right? Believing that you're a coach all ties back into this imposter syndrome. So not charging anything, having drama about your prices, helicopter coaching, feeling very attached to you are the one who gets them results, right? They're going to be disappointed with you if you don't get them the results, right? Not having any boundaries, right? Feeling like you just have to be there for your potential clients or your actual clients, like whenever they reach out to you. Like, could be like 11:30 at night and you could get a message or an email. I gotta check it. I gotta make sure they're doing okay. What if something's happening? Someone messaged me. I need to get back to them. Like feeling like you're not having any personal boundaries in your coaching. And then we talked about this earlier with the coaches who have a lot of education, and how sometimes the more education you have, the more you realize there's out there to learn and that there's always people who know more than you. So having imposter syndrome can show up like just like endless education, more information, more research, more, accumulating certifications, buying books, like reading books, reading personal development books, reading books about coaching, getting more letters after your name, right? And don't get me wrong, guys. a lot of times I think people think that I'm like anti-certification. Like, oh, she says like certifications aren't good. Certifications are amazing. And I think being educated is really important. But the trap that I see coaches falling into is relying on that as a belief that a certification, a book, letters after your name, or any type of education is what is going to make you a coach. And it's going to make you an expert. You don't become an expert from a piece of paper or an education, right? If you did, there wouldn't be so many highly qualified experts out there struggling with this, right? You become an expert in your mind, all right? So, how do we overcome this? How do we overcome imposter syndrome, knowing that everybody has it? It's something that we all deal with. It's part of the human brain. It makes us human, and it doesn't matter at what stage of the game we're at. I don't care if you've built a 7-figure business, this is going to be there. So how do we overcome it? Any ideas? What do you guys think? How do we overcome imposter syndrome? What do we do about it? Now we know it's there, and it's not something that's gone wrong with us. We're not broken as coaches. But what do we do about it? What do you guys think? Do we just let it keep showing up the way it's been showing up? Do we just try to avoid it? Pretend like it's not really there. We don't really feel that way. Try to like convince ourselves that we don't believe it. Denise says, change your thoughts. I love it. What else? What do you guys think? Change your thoughts. What do you have to do before you can change your thoughts? Melissa says, affirmations. I love it. Listing all my skills and the stuff I'm really good at. Helps me to remember I'm not an imposter. Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of like going into like, reminding yourself what you do already know when your brain tells you you don't know things. Joanna, challenge those thoughts with evidence of the contrary. Yes, I love that one. Yeah. CTFAR, I love it, Christina. The model, right? Stop the negative self-talk. Yeah, how do we stop the negative self-talk, you guys? Do we just like beat ourselves up every time it pops up? How do we stop it? Make a list, put it everywhere. Yeah, you can put it on your phone. You can put it on your screensaver. You can put those affirmations places. But what is the very first step before we can do any of those things? Before we can challenge our thoughts, before we can remind ourselves what we're good at, before we can, make new thoughts, before we can even work a model? Joanna, notice and identify the thoughts for what they are. Yeah, exactly. The first thing that you have to do is just acknowledge it. It sounds so simple. That's why so many of us just skip it. Like we get to the next step because that one sounds so obvious. But that's where we get stuck, is when we're unconscious about it happening, right? We take action all day long from our imposter syndrome, right? From our thoughts and these beliefs that we have about ourselves, that we forget to acknowledge it's there. Right now, it's like, oh yeah, we're acknowledging it, so we're not thinking about that we need to do it because we're all talking about it right now. But what about when it's happening and we're not even noticing it? What about every time we sacrifice or we compromise showing up for our goals because of an imposter syndrome thought? Right? Just acknowledge that it's there. That's the first step, is getting really good at being conscious and noticing it when it creeps up. Like shifting out of imposter syndrome doesn't take years of deep work, right? It doesn't take all this time of like, I've really got to do a lot of self-work. It's just being willing to do the work when it comes up every day and shifting out of it. Because you can shift out of an emotion in a moment, right? So what I see happen a lot with coaches is that we feel guilt if we even acknowledge that we're feeling that way. Sometimes we feel guilty for doubting ourselves, especially on social media where everything is like sunshine and rainbows, and we see all of these other coaches being like this vessel of like positivity, that if we feel negative emotion and we acknowledge it, we feel guilty and we feel like even more of an imposter. So we just try to like avoid that it's there. We push it away because we're like, oh, like I don't want to acknowledge that I feel that way. So this is step one, right? Acknowledge that it's there and that you're feeling it, right? Without judgment, without going into shame or thinking anything has gone wrong, because nothing has gone wrong. You're totally human. You have a brain that's working exactly the way it's supposed to. It's trying to protect you, right? So instead of resisting and like avoid looking at it from being there, what happens when we avoid it and we resist it and then we don't do anything is it just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and we feel it even more, like we're this bigger imposter, right? Like we're like, the more we avoid that it's there, the bigger the problem becomes. And the more we believe that we're an imposter because we're hiding and because we're feeling something, the emotion even more intensely because we're resisting against it. And because we're not creating evidence in our life that we are an expert and we are a coach because we're avoiding even showing up. So the first step is acknowledge that it's there. All right? And then from that place of being that like observer, just take a step back and be like, okay, brain, it's there. What is this about today? And it might be a different thought every day. Maybe it's not the same one, right? Maybe it has these different forms that it pops up in your life. When you're showing up, when you're doing things that are outside your comfort zone and that imposter syndrome comes up, brain, that is so interesting that you're thinking this today. What is that all about? Be very curious with yourself. No judgment. Do you notice how that's not like, oh my gosh, why am I still struggling with this? Brain, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with me that I still struggle with this? It's very neutral. It's like, that is so interesting. Brain, what is that all about? Right? And it usually comes up when you're doing something new. Right? So for coaches this is where most coaches get stuck in the beginning. When you're growing a business, it's something very new, right? Something you've never done before. It's scary. And then our unconscious mind, because it's wired to keep us safe, is just looking to protect us. It wants to save us from danger and death, right? So if we get called out on social media or a client is disappointed or a client says something, it's like, that is like danger to our brain. It feels like social death, right? It feels like shame, which is one of the worst emotions we could ever feel, right? So acknowledge it, call it out that it's there, and ask your brain, what's it all about? And notice all of the different ways that your brain will make these objections in your mind that are code for this imposter syndrome coming up, right? So if we're not acknowledging this consciously and recognizing it and getting curious about what it's all about, your brain is going to go to the what if worst case scenario, So what once was like all of this excitement about growing your coaching business, right? Your passion, why you're doing this, all of a sudden you're worrying about all of these things, right? Here are some examples that a lot of coaches worry about, right? A lot of us are moms, so what about my kids, right? Imposter syndrome will tell you you're not being a good mom because it means for sure you're not being there for your kids if you do this. Your brain is like, for sure your kids are going to need you. They're probably like tugging on you right now trying to get your attention. But all of a sudden your brain is like, if you do this thing that you might not be expert enough to do, that you're already kind of feeling like an imposter about, like you're probably going to be a bad mom. right? So we've decided that, like, for sure we're going to let our kids down if we make time for our business and try to do this thing. What about our husbands, right? Does this make me a bad wife? What if he needs me and then I've decided to, focus on my business? Who am I to do that? Like, I'm supposed to be a good wife. I'm supposed to be a good mother. You guys starting to see the other layers of this that we don't even think of as imposter syndrome, that our brain kind of comes up with, all of these what if scenarios. What about summer? Summer is coming up. Maybe I should just have a nice summer with my kids and my family. This is my time to be with them. So if I make it about me and growing my business, who am I to be doing that? And what does that make me? What does that make me? What kind of imposter am I? Clearly, I'm an imposter mom and an imposter wife if I'm trying to be a good coach and grow a business, right? So your brain will give you all of these objections. It's not always as clear cut and dry as coach client, right? These are all of the reasons why you shouldn't do the thing that you're feeling like an imposter about doing. And it feels very real. But at the bottom of all of that, once you peel back all of the layers, it's like, well, what if I can't really get them results? It's all encompassing. So number one, recognize it, what your brain's telling you. What are the symptoms, right, that you identify with? You guys have let me know about a lot of those. And the next thing we need to do, now that we know it's there and we've acknowledged it, is just breaking that belief, breaking that pattern. So whatever objection your brain is telling you, right, we need to answer it. I think Joanna was the one that said that in the comments, right? Acknowledge it's there, but then you need to answer that. Challenge those beliefs with evidence of the contrary. Exactly. And you can do this with any objection your brain is telling you around growing your business. You need to answer it, and you can do it on a piece of paper. So write them all out. This is the acknowledging part. Write them all out for being there, right? And then ask yourself what questions you can ask your brain that are going to challenge that belief that's very practiced, right? What are some great questions you can ask yourself when you are in imposter syndrome? Let me know what questions you think would be good to ask your brain. You're just getting curious, you notice an objection is there. What's a good question you can ask your brain to challenge that belief that your unconscious mind is deciding is true? I have a really obvious one for you. So the obvious one is ask your brain, is it true? Brain, is this true? And maybe you ask yourself that question, you're like, I mean, it is kind of true. I don't have any clients yet. It's kind of true. Is it 100% true, brain? Like, can I prove this in a court of law? Like, could I take this to a judge and jury and everyone would agree it's true? No, right? There's going to be some people who might think it's true, and there's going to be other people like, no, that's amazing what you know. Tell me how to do it. The other question you can ask yourself is, do I want it to be true? Why is this such a powerful question? Because we create our reality. So whatever you are looking for, you will find. What do I want my truth to be? Right? Ask yourself these questions. Ask yourself these questions. Is it true? Do I want it to be true? What do I want my truth to be? All right? We get to create, just like our clients create their own results, right? We just facilitate the results as coaches. We could create our own results, but we do it with our thoughts and our beliefs first, all right? So this is something, like I said, that can shift in a moment. It doesn't take years of that work, that deep work, that dealing with that inner self-worth, right, that you feel so guilty about having. It can happen in a moment, all right? And how willing are you every day to stay conscious and aware of those thoughts and those beliefs when they pop up and answer them, right? You can shift out of this in a moment. So who here feels like they had a shift today, even just talking about this? Leave a heart emoji if you felt like you had a shift today. All right? Leave me a yes in the comments if you had a shift. All right? And if you're watching the replay, put hashtag replay, leave me a heart. Let me know this was valuable for you. If this is something that you needed to hear today, let me know. And let me know what else you want to hear. You know, what resources I can send for you, what trainings I can make. Let me know what you guys need the most. And that's what I'm here for. That's what I want to do. So let me know. And I hope you all have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day and a beautiful weekend. We're almost to the weekend. All right, guys. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.